Hello, everyone. Today is December 23rd, 2022. My guest today is Michael Carroll. Michael is my good friend. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Michael.
Absolutely happy to be here. Is this the first in-person one?
Between us?
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think so.
I love it.
Yes.
It's exciting.
This is, I think, 6 or 5.
5 or 6, I can't remember.
Yes.
But it's awesome.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
Most of our friendship has been virtual.
I agree. Yeah, I didn't think about that. But that is crazy to think about. Outside of high school, I mean, it's really been 11 years of just texting and keeping in touch and calling, and
Yes.
which is crazy. But that takes a lot of effort. So that's really cool that we've kept in touch that way,
Yes.
because it's not easy.
And I don't even think kept in touch, and it also
No.
we weren't that close in high school.
No.
So we got closer through college, remotely, after college too.
Yeah.
We honestly haven't seen each other many times.
No. That you're probably like, I don't know, if I had to put a number on it.
I was thinking
Since-
less than 15.
Yeah.
Maybe 15.
Yeah, for sure. Since high school. Definitely 15. Like probably around that number. But that is crazy. And I've always thought we weren't super close, and then like college was kind of like we were going our own different ways, and then reconnected afterwards, and then have just kind of kept in touch. And I feel like we've kind of grown the same way,
Yes.
and have the same interests with like health and fitness and all of those things. And I think that's helps keep friendships going when you're kind of growing in the same direction. You know what I mean?
Yes. And what's crazy is how friendships how when people have different values, those really come out. Like in high school, before that, even in college, I feel like you find yourself in some groups. Maybe you have the same values. Eventually you guys kind of form some similar values, but if those values, when people leave the groups, sometimes those values really fork.
Yes.
And the people themselves are not the same people.
Yeah. Start to see. Well, and also like then you go experience other things, and then you have and formulate different values that are different from other people too. And it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just life. And I think that's why there are a lot of friendships that I've had that have had a really good like run, and then it just kind of like somehow ran its course. And it's not like a bad thing. I don't have any hate for anybody or anything like that. It's just like we've grown apart, and that's okay. But it's cool that we've grown together in that way, which is awesome. 'Cause
Yes.
It's unique. I don't think that happens a ton, which is cool.
No, it doesn't happen a ton. How do you think you've grown since college?
Since college, wow. I think being more just emotionally aware, one. And then I think starting to just care about, I feel like for a long time I was so focused on my own self and like my own agenda and not anybody else's. And then I think probably say like 2017 I started to like really shift my mindset on that. And I think that's been the biggest growth in my opinion. Just thinking about how I think just thinking about how life is short, and really embracing and enjoying the people who are around you, and like making a conscious effort to show people you care about them and go out of your way to, like when I'm in town, I want to make sure I'm seeing a handful of people that I'm like really still close with, for example. So I think just small things like that, I think make people feel appreciated, and then it's reciprocated as well. And then it makes things thrive. And it also helps to have that sense of community, which I think we've talked about a lot too. Because being alone is never fun.
No.
But I think for a long time I felt like I was alone because I wasn't as emotionally intelligent, and I wasn't able to be as vulnerable, and that then made me feel like I was alone. You know what I mean?
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes. Did something happen in 2017, or was there a particular moment or couple of months?
I went through a big breakup. It was one, and I started to kind of like branch out and do things differently for myself, and explore a lot more too. And also, so excuse me, I'd say like 2017 to 2018, and then 2019 was a big change too. I'd say those are like two pivotal points. 2019 was when I had like my fitness journey and I lost all my weight and felt better about myself. And then also made that change to go to Nebraska, which was like super random, but it was, I think, an important time for me to like reset and start over. And I think I haven't looked back since. I've like really been fortunate about the changes that I've made since then. So I think, yeah, those are kind of like two pivotal points for me.
What was going on when you were gaining weight and kind of before you made that pivot?
I was making a lot of I was doing a lot of self-inflicting, and like causing myself to get anxious for doing stupid stuff that I don't want to dive into the details, but just like lying and not being truthful to people. And I felt like over time those things added up and made me feel really bad about a lot of those things. And I think reading, have you read David Goggins' book?
No.
I recommend it. It's really good.
He came out with a new one recently.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now too. It's really
nice.
Good. But reading his book, because I'm in the second one right now, and he talks a lot about this, is like at a certain point, you've got to just like, once you start to be transparent and like honest and open and like stop the bullshit of like lying and all that stuff, there's just a sense of like your mind's just a lot more clear because you don't have to worry about the bullshit, you know,
Yes.
the unnecessary stuff that you don't have to, I don't know. Like, for example, I think one of the things, I know we're going to talk about the year, but like one of the things this year that I think I've learned and really appreciated about myself was having like tough conversations, even though I didn't want to have them, was good for me because I don't feel like I left anything out there for interpretation. It's like, hey, I spoke my mind and this is how I feel, and I'm not lying, I'm not avoiding, I'm just addressing certain situations, you know what I mean? It just,
Yes.
I don't know, it just helped make me feel a hell of a lot better. And yeah, I think that's what I didn't do historically, and I think that's been a big change for me.
That's huge.
Yeah.
For me, it's very difficult to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It's being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, there are degrees of vulnerability.
Of course.
And sometimes it's just, I don't know. It's not easy. I had a few tough conversations, but again, I am not always the one to prompt those.
Yeah.
And I understand there's also levels of being transparent and being truthful, and it's like carrying weight.
Mm-hmm.
The less transparent you are, the less truthful. If it's blatant lying, then it's like adding baggage, and you know, you don't need to say, you know, start preaching gospel and saying it's truth and, you know, whatever. But lying it's very tough. And one thing, I had this realization in college, and even since college, like, you know, you have this realization, you make big changes, but still sometimes natural things happen. Like, very quick to react, and you might react with a small white lie. You think it's not a big deal, but the thing about lying is, like, you put a fabrication out there of saying, you know, oh, I achieved this, then by all measures and standards, you've already achieved that.
Yeah.
You know, so there's no reason for you to actually achieve it because you've put it out there. So anything that we lie about saying we've done is, it's going to make it, I feel, less probable that we'll actually do it because it's just like, oh, we've already achieved it. It was just that easy. You just say it. There's no reason to work harder at it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think on the flip side, too, of like lying about something you didn't do, it's like you're just kind of avoiding confronting your mistakes, and you're just like, no, I didn't do that. And then it's like, it's easier to just move on and not think about it, but then it helps, or it hurts with other situations, because that's how you start to cope with things. You start to avoid, and you don't actually address, like you said, the elephant in the room. And I think now it's so much easier, like you said, just to like address it, let's talk about it, and let's move on, because it just, like takes that weight off of your shoulders, and it makes it so much better. So I 100% agree with that.
Yes. And although that's a huge step, it's not the only step. It's like it's small. A huge step, but it's very small in comparison to what you know. There still has to be a lot of work.
100%.
And continual, like, it's continuous process. It never ends.
What type of work, like, do you think that requires to continue to elevate that, or like get to the next level of that?
I think being aware is, and practicing cultivating awareness is probably the best thing, because the lack of awareness, and I don't know if we've spoken about this, but stimulus and response, I don't think so. But there's stimulus in the world, and this goes, I read a book, I forgot, it's called The Power of Habit.
I think we may have talked about that book.
I think we talked about it, but it says that there's a trigger, routine, reward. And then I just read Nir Eyal's book, which I forget the name, but it's also about creating and building. He says trigger, routine, reward, and there's a fourth part that I forget. It's something about logging, or I can't remember that fourth part. I have to go through the book again.
Logging meaning like documenting?
Something like that. Like I'm not sure, because he put it in the context of creating products. So he was like speaking about creating habit-forming products. But regardless, if you just do the idea of stimulus and response, we all get stimulated by something, whether that be we see a red stop sign, or we hear our mom calling our name, or whatever it may be, we taste coffee that's too hot. There's a response, and if we're able to cultivate awareness, and truthfully, one of my favorite things is right now I'm doing a lot of not all of it, but a majority of my exercise with like a meditation app going in the background instead of music. Because music, one, you have a meditation app, it's continually reminding me to breathe, which is huge. It's a awareness cultivation. Whereas with music, I don't know, sometimes I get lost, but that's what I think. I think, and it just cultivating the awareness to separate stimulus and response. And I forgot, what was your question?
Like, what do you think takes that to the next level? Like and you talked about being aware.
Yes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, like you said, being aware is super, super important. And I think once you start to become aware, it's hard to avoid it, if that makes sense. Like
Yes.
it's easy to kind of like, oh wow, be more mindful. And to your point, like I think one thing that I do a lot is, like you said, being mindful and like just looking at that curtain. It's like that curtain is red, and just like embracing the now of where we're at, and like taking a step back from all of the other stuff going on. But
Yes.
I like that breathing. I stopped listening to music while I work out too. I listen to podcasts mainly because I feel like it allows me to think
Yes.
about stuff. Not necessarily breathe, but like thinking about just other things that stimulate my brain while I'm working out. I don't know. I enjoy that personally, but I like that idea. I think that's really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think being aware is super important.
Yes.
And then I think
Reading.
that's also important. Exercise.
Exercise.
Just like trying to focus on bettering yourself every day, and reflection, journaling, for example, is another one that I don't do enough of, but when I do it, I do enjoy like reflecting on the day or how things have gone.
When I journal, I genuinely feel like if I go into a journaling session with like a lot, like just feeling with the cluttered brain, and I journal, I feel way calmer at the end. It's incredible. I don't know what about just journaling. It doesn't have to necessarily be, paragraphs. It can be paragraphs. It could be just like bullet points, thoughts, like little reflection graphs or something. But afterwards, I feel much better.
It's like a way of like organizing your thoughts almost.
Yes.
On paper, and then just spitting them out instead of just having your internal brain think about what you're writing. It's like, okay, I spit that out and I actually said it, and now I can like move on.
Yes.
And yeah, just reflect on the day and like, oh wow, I could have done this differently, or I did this really well. I think also too, having gratitude is another one, of just like small things, like thankful for something that happened into the day rather than like thinking about all the negative stuff that happened.
Huge.
Because I think it's very easy to like be pissed off about a certain thing and just go down a rabbit hole about all the bad things that could have happened and shoulda, coulda, woulda done all these things. But instead, just sitting like before bed, I'll usually like have a thought and just like, okay, I'm really thankful for this today. We're happy that this happened. And it just helps your mind like go to bed easier without all this shit going on about all this bad stuff or stuff you got to do tomorrow. It's just like, wow, I'm thankful for this because it's not guaranteed that we have tomorrow. So yeah, just taking advantage of those small things and small wins that you have in your life too.
Small wins.
Yeah.
And these things like gratitude, it's natural to not be grateful. It's like, it's also natural to want to eat a bunch of crap food.
Is it though?
I think so, because we're like, our mind thinks that we're going to go into a, it's always in that caveman mode, cavewoman mode,
Eat
where
as
it's
much
as you can, because you might not know if you have it later down the line.
True.
And that's how I feel about gratitude too. It's like, I don't know, it doesn't work, obviously. And I think, I used to be like, we're animals. Humans are just animals. And that's it. We're sophisticated, but we're animals. And now I understand the, kind of the essence of humanity, like what it means to be human. Yes, we're animals, but we're extremely sophisticated to a degree that no other animal is even close. Even if whales and dolphins and octopi are very intelligent, possibly more intelligent than us, they haven't utilized. They just they aren't able to do what we do.
Yeah.
they aren't able to socialize and do things together the way we are.
Mm-hmm. And create what we've created.
Create what we've created.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think humans are very, it's fascinating. But yeah, we're still animals.
Yes.
And I think especially when you hear about some things that you realize that we are animals. One question I always kind of wonder is like, do you think that a lot or that people are like born like evil or is that just kind of like a thing that they learn? It's like a learned behavior, like I don't really know the answer to that. But when I've seen, for example, I was with my friend the other night. He has a brand new baby, super just interested in like looking at everything and just so innocent, right? And it makes me feel like all that stuff has got to be learned behavior because I don't feel like a baby is just born mean or evil. But I don't know. I took a completely different shift, but I'm always curious as to people's opinions on that.
I think it's a combination.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, I listened to a 25-hour podcast on Genghis Khan and the Mongolian Empire. The second one, I think, was Genghis Khan. Apparently, he was raised in like a really savage environment, like very savage, death everywhere. And so, yes, he was, conditioned in a way where massacring a huge portion of the Asian continent wasn't that, it wasn't like what it would be to us.
Yeah.
And I feel that same way, I have a dog and she looks kind of savage, but I know like the coyotes that are out there are way more savage.
Yeah, 100%.
And they're just conditioned on another level of like life and death. Like she hasn't really seen life and death. Those coyotes live life and death.
Yeah.
But I've also heard, so like in Australia, in Australia, they have a while back, I think right when they started to colonize Australia, they brought cows. And some of the they were domesticated cows, but some of the cows were released. Just, they happened to escape. Mm-hmm. And within a couple generations, it didn't take very long, those cows became, I think they call them shrub bulls. And those things are savage.
Interesting.
Those things are very savage. And so I guess the one thing I have to say is, yes, conditioning for the individual, but it doesn't take too long generationally for things to shift.
Yeah. Dependent upon living conditions and their environment and what.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really all dependent upon that, right? So, yeah, I think that's very similar to humans, right?
The World War I and World War II veterans compared to millennials and Gen Zers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you probably felt some of this maybe in a different country, but I was in the Bahamas and just, it's not like bad by any means, but it makes you appreciate where we're from. And I think a lot of times we take for granted being in America and having all the things that we have and the sense of, I guess, the opportunity that we have here that a lot of places don't have. I think like I was on the beach in the Bahamas and there was like 3 to 4 year old kids walking around like selling stuff to people. And it was just like, that would never happen. I mean, obviously if they were doing like a fundraiser or something, but like, I don't know, it just made you realize they're born and they got to start working for families and doing stuff that we don't have to do here. And it's just makes you appreciate where where we're from, for sure.
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you mentioned my travels. I've traveled to Africa, and
Yeah.
that was so obvious. It's like you go there, even you don't, I mean, we as Americans, like, yes, the economy's down.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, things might not look like they did for our parents' generation, which was truly incredible,
Mm-hmm.
like a really incredible time to be an American. Still, I think is, but that's the thing. I still think being an American right now is an extremely good opportunity.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things available to us as Americans that a majority of the rest of the world has no access to, no chance at.
Yeah.
And whether that be like our education, our education is great, but it's a combination because there are places in the world that have very well educated people. South Africa is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
South African, even the poorest people, I'm not going to say that, but poor people there are well educated. They
Mm-hmm.
speak English fluently, really well. But the economy isn't there. Iran is also another place where a large portion of the population is well educated. They'll have a university degree, but there's no economy surrounding that education.
Yeah.
And so one thing, like, we have an amazing education system. I think it's kind of overblown how necessary and how many people need to be immersed within the higher education system.
Meaning
we sell the idea that everyone needs a four-year degree to be successful, and it's not necessarily true.
Agreed.
And those are pivotal years.
Yeah.
18 to 22, those are pivotal years. If someone is, considering a career where, like, for example, I know a lot of people who took those 4 years and did something that, like nursing,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like you didn't need to go into a 4-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
Nursing's a 3-year degree, and those 4 years you really didn't do anything that helped you out with the career you're going to have. So it's like and I think now people are understanding that like apprenticeships, trade schools, things that will give you skills that will give you a good paying job for the next 20 years.
So I have a company that I work with who is doing exactly kind of what you're mentioning. So it's a construction company, and they're interning, or they're starting with high schools. So they have a college internship program that's really, really good and sophisticated. But now they're starting with high school kids, and they're going and pitching like this idea of like starting January. As soon as they graduate in like May or June, they'll get a job for 4 years. They'll help pay for a 2-year education at a junior college, just so they can have their associates and get like something with construction, like some sort of degree there, right? But also then give them like an internship and a job as soon as they graduate, so they can start making money and get like a full-time job with benefits and all those things. Because of what you're mentioning, like a lot of people are getting away from or thinking about college a lot differently. And so he's trying to sell that idea. And I thought it was really interesting and a really cool idea that I feel like a lot of people are probably going to start to move towards because they know it's not necessary to technically go to a 4-year degree. So I just thought that was, when you brought that up, I think we'll see a lot more of that, I feel like, with companies offering some sort of something like that. I'd imagine, I'm guessing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great program.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then I think they'll give like a rotational program. So every year they'll start like in the field, and then they'll do like project management stuff, and then they'll go to superintendent stuff and really learn all of the parts of the business by the time they're done with this program. And then as soon as they're done, they'll get like a full-time job offer with whatever they want to do. So that way they have experience with multiple things, which I thought was pretty cool.
And they could make money within 4 years.
Exactly. And they'll make money right off right off the bat at 18.
That's huge.
Which is huge because it starts your life off and still be living with your parents probably while you're going to, get your 2-year associates. So I think it's really cool.
But even if some people are in a position where they have to leave, I think, that's good. That's an alternative.
Yeah.
Versus just being told
You have to go to school.
you have to go to 4-year degree. And you have to work towards having a 4-year degree.
And you have to take out all these loans as a kid who you don't really know
Exactly.
what you're doing.
No.
You're just being told you have to take out all these loans and it's expensive and
we don't realize it.
yeah, and there's so many people who are still paying off their loans today. It's just, it's nuts. So I think that's a really cool opportunity.
It is.
Yeah.
And yes. So I'm, and we in America are we value economy. We value commerce. And luckily we have a government that I think does a pretty good job of maintaining the commerce, maintaining a position where free trade goes throughout the country. That's a huge value for our government. I think for a lot of other governments, that's not necessarily the biggest value. And it's interesting but going back to it, it can be very overshadowed for people in America.
Yeah.
And whether you go to the Bahamas, Mexico, which is right there, Africa, even, Europe, there are plenty, if you compare opportunity for young people, I haven't really looked into the research, but even for people our age, like most people our age that I know have a pretty good job that they can maintain. Like the economy's good. Most people our age have a solid job.
Yeah.
Like whether that be as so many things.
For sure. And there's a lot more opportunity. And again, I know there's, like you said, there's probably a lot of research that goes into it, but like, yeah, there's a ton of opportunity, I think, out there to get a job. And I know there's like a lot of companies that are laying people off right now. But I think there's still so many different opportunities, especially remote now too. Like that opens up a whole other wheelhouse of different opportunities that I don't think we previously had. So yeah, I do agree. I think there's a lot out there, and I think a lot of times you look at all the negatives, kind of going back to what we said earlier, but there's still so much more that I think we have than other countries, like by far.
By far. And it's hard, like we've already said, recognizing that is huge.
Yeah.
Gratitude. I mean, gratitude for things like, not getting hit by a car today.
Yeah. It's small, like, or just even like I told you before this, I was with my family last night, and just like having both your parents, right? Like, 'cause not everybody does, and being able to hang out with them and be with them during the holidays, like small stuff like that. Like, you're not gonna have, that's not gonna be forever. So let's enjoy it while we can and be grateful for the time that we do have, with them.
Yes. So we talked about, things we can do to, what was it? We mentioned reading. We mentioned awareness,
Gratitude,
exercise,
journaling. What else? Mindfulness, meditation.
Yes. How was your year this last? So this is December 23rd. About 8 days left in the year. How was your 2022?
Yeah, 2022 was it was a lot. Just travel. I feel like I traveled a lot, but this is the first year that we got engaged. So planning a wedding was a lot, and it's been a crazy experience. Lexi is taken on the blunt of that, so I got to give her all the credit. But it's still stressful nonetheless of just coordinating and trying to figure out who's coming and where it's going to be and the cost and all that stuff. But it's been a lot of fun. In February, we did 75 hard, which I think we talked about that. But that part of that challenge was like, don't drink for 75 days. And I think that was like the biggest time where I had like a lot of growth, because I think for a lot of times, and I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts, you feel like you have to drink to fit in socially. And I think I found that you don't, one, and two, my body just felt like so much better. So I think that was a really cool and unique experience, because I think for a long time I would use that as kind of like a way to just get a little bit more comfortable, ease the anxiety of social anxiety that naturally everybody has at like functions or when you're out somewhere or whatever it may be. So to like not have that as a crutch was different, but it was also very nice to like wake up and not feel like crap. And so that was fun. And then I also I think we did like it was like clean eating for 75 days, no like restaurants or no any of that, all cooking at home. That was like, just my body just felt like the best it's ever felt at that time. So I think that was a really cool experience that we're actually going to try come January 1st again, just leading up to the wedding. But yeah, I felt like that point though shifted a lot of like my mental of like, all right, I'm shifting from being this 20-year-old to, okay, now I'm thinking about a wedding and I'm thinking about maybe kids in the future and potentially buying a house and all of these things. So I'm like, it was kind of like a really good challenge to do at that point, because I think for a long time it's like, let's just have fun, right? Let's just enjoy being young. But now I'm starting to think about planning, and so it was a really good time to go through that experience and like, okay, I got to get my shit together. Not that I already didn't, but just start to really think about planning for my future and my life with Lexi. So yeah, I was really happy about that. And then we did a lot of traveling. So we went to California, and then we did, my parents came out to Chicago. We did our wedding tasting. What else did we do? Went back to California twice, and then Dallas for a wedding. And then we went to Florida, went to New Orleans for work, Cleveland for work, Baltimore for work. There's a lot of traveling. All that to say, that was probably one of the busiest years I've had. And I think in reflecting, probably won't ever do as much traveling as I did this year. I think there was like 25 or something flights that I had this year.
Wow. So
I'm like just burnt out and excited for like my routine to come back starting January. But it's been fun. Like it was I'm good. Okay. It was a good experience. I'm happy we did it. I feel like we're at this point now of like, all right, we got a lot of this out, and then we're going to get married. And now let's start to think about like, all right, the next phase of kids potentially. So it was a really good year to have right before we get married, because it's been a lot. But anyways, I said that all to say, I think it was like a year of realizing like we're not getting any younger. We got to really start to plan our lives. So I think a lot of what I've always done is just lived day by day, and just kind of like figured out things as they come, and not really planned for what we're doing. But now it's completely different. So I don't know. Does that answer your question? Is that what you're looking for? Or what was kind of like the idea behind that? Just like reflecting on the year?
Yes, that makes sense. And especially the not letting the day by day go by. I mean, you don't really have bad habits. I mean, I'm sure you do. We all have bad habits, but you don't have like self-destructive habits as some people who do not do any reflection, who do not look back on their day, who kind of do take it day by day. And I mean, the years go by.
Yeah. I just got a picture from my uncle. It was 9 years ago with Madison and myself, and I was like, holy cow, like it's been that long already since that picture. It just made me realize, like, yeah, time's flying. We're not getting any younger. We're only getting older. And I think we've talked about this too, but also putting an emphasis on health even more so, and body movement and like stretching. And you talked about this earlier with your couch, like trying to avoid just sitting all the time and trying to just move your body, stuff like that. Because I think as we get older, like people are going to start to get older and like, oh, you know, you're 40 years old, you're 50 years old. That it's just going to be, I don't want to be that way. Like, no. I want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Naturally, there's going to be things that as we get older, we're just going to feel older, right? But I think there's a lot of things we can do to avoid feeling that way. And that's what I want to do. And fixing ailments like my knee with that knees over toes guy was awesome. It was like, wow, I can actually do things to fix my body, or stretching, wearing better shoes for your feet so your feet don't hurt as much. Like small things that I think we don't really realize we can fix, small ailments, is something I'm 100% going to continue to do as I get older and age, because it's not going to get any easier.
No. And I think there's one thing that you and I relate on is taking responsibility of everything around us. Granted, we don't have full responsibility. Some things are out of our control, but not everything.
Yeah.
And if we acknowledge that not everything is out of our control, stoicism, we both got into stoicism within the last couple of years. Determining what is in our control, out of our control. Another thing we've talked about is you're a Raiders fan, I'm a Chargers fan. We're still fans of our teams, but not the way we were a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it's because we have no control over those games.
Yeah.
Both of those NFL teams have been playing pretty poorly for the last decade.
Yeah.
And
plus.
Yeah. And it's tough to care about. I mean, you have absolutely no control either. You can't even say I put it all out there because you haven't done anything. We haven't done anything.
Yep. That's been a big one. Just sports in general, really, I feel like. I mean, I watch sports. Like, I watched the World Cup final, which was awesome, by the way. Did you watch it?
Oh, yes.
That was an amazing game.
Yes.
I'll watch stuff like that, and I'll watch, like, you know, the finals and World Series, Super Bowl. I'll watch football. But, yeah, I've stopped making or revolving my life around that stuff because, like you said, there's nothing we can do. It's fun because it's like a pop culture thing to be a part of and you want to know what's going on, but yeah, you can't control anything. So it's just, there's no reason to get pissed off about it.
No.
Cause there's not anything you can do. I mean, as like a joking fan, I'll be like, oh, the Raiders, they suck. But like, I'm not hurt by if they don't do well, you know, it's just like, well, there's nothing you can do. And it's a waste of your energy.
Yes.
Cause you can put that elsewhere.
Into bettering ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
Which is, you know, like going back to it, I think before we were taking responsibility and now we're like even more so, as you say, we're getting older. You know, people are, oh, you're 40 now. I had some friends say, oh, you're 30 now. It's going to start deteriorating. And like, dude, I've still hit the gym every day. I'm
Mhm.
still like actually probably moving more now than I did 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like out on the NBA court,
Yeah.
but it's still good.
Yeah.
And it's all in my control. It's like sacrifice. There's a lot of sacrifice
Yeah.
to anything, whether that be our body, health. You made a huge sacrifice, 75 days. That's very difficult. No, I mean, you can't go out to a restaurant. That means you have to go make food, buy food. Can't go out. There's a lot of social things. People want to go to bars.
Mhm.
People, and you have to, even if you kind of are saving money by not purchasing it, there's still some sort of sacrifice there.
Yeah. I did, which was also interesting because I thought like, oh, I don't want to go to a bar if I can't drink. But I was like, actually, like, it's not that bad. Like, your friends, especially if your friends, like, it's another thing is like not being pressured into that stuff. And if you are, then you probably shouldn't be around those people if you feel a certain way. Like, but anyways, yeah, just like my friends were all like, oh yeah, no worries. Like, we can do something else. Or, if you don't mind coming, like, you don't have to drink. Like, everybody was always supportive with that, which I thought was cool. Didn't make me feel any sort of guilt towards not drinking, But yeah, I think there's always got to be a level of sacrifice and it can't just be easy to get what you want. Like, you've got to give up something or, yeah, just sacrifice. But yeah, I think going back to what you said with like some of those changes, getting older, just I think on top of, and going back to reflecting too, I'm bouncing around 10 different areas, but having like difficult conversations with people was also another part of like this year that I think I've realized, like, I rather have these conversations and tell someone how I truly feel and hurt someone's feelings, or maybe like not necessarily hurt their feelings, but just be truthful. And if that hurts someone's feelings, like, I'm sorry, but I've got to speak my truth because it makes me feel better. I'm never going to be an asshole. I'm not going to deliver it in a mean way, but just, I want to speak my mind always. And I think that's a big part of growing up and getting older as well. Cause I think I don't know. We've beat this dead horse, but I just kind of thought about it again as like a super big part of 2022, I think, in reflecting.
Acting in accordance with our values.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to just forego that and say, oh, the group's values seem to be this, so I should just do this. It's like, no. That's David Goggins. He aligns his actions with his values. It doesn't matter. He doesn't care about anything besides just his values and aligning whatever he does with that.
Yeah. On that note, I'm reading his book and he talks about how he reads comments sometimes, or he doesn't read comments, but sometimes he'll like go through and he'll said he takes a screenshot of all of the comments, and then he said he put together in a screenshot, or from all the screenshots, a mixtape, and he wrapped all of the things that people like would tweet at him or something like that were mean. And he plays the mixtape on repeat of all the stuff that people said, and I just thought that was funny. Just like not caring about that stuff, and like you said, living to your value and using that as like fuel in a way too, which I thought was funny.
It's incredible. That guy's insane.
He's nuts, but
it's very really motivating.
Yeah, it's really cool though to see like,
yo, you can make them bigger. Right here on top.
I got it, I think. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think from the outside, everybody sees him as this hard dude who hasn't like why do you doing this stuff? Like, I think the one thing that reading his book and just listening to, he's on Rogan recently too. He's like, I have to face my inner bitch all the time. Like, I don't always want to do these things. Like, I'm still struggling with, because I'm still that person who was 300 pounds and who was going through all these things. Like, I still have to face that on a daily basis. It's not just like all of a sudden I'm a hardened person that goes on 100-mile runs. Like, I have to internally battle that every day. I think that was like a cool thing to hear. Like, you're not just going to be fixed once you get to a place with where you're at. It's a constant, like, you have to keep working and keep trying and keep being mindful of the person that you were and the person that you want to be and continue to be. I thought that was like a really cool, like, okay, he's a human, you know, he's might from the outside look like an alien because he's a freak of nature, right? But he's a human too.
Yes, and even decades in, he's still saying that.
Yep, exactly. Which is awesome because it's like, it's never, you're never just gonna rest your feet up and, you know, sail off in the sunset. Like, okay, I accomplished it, right? But I think that's something he battled with his first book. It's like he got all these copies sold and was pretty famous doing all these book signings. And he's like, I kind of like, for a second, went back and thought about coasting, and like I was struggling with that, but I had to realize like I need to go back and be Goggins. Like, this is David that's speaking, who's the 300-pound
fatty.
Yeah. So I just thought it was like, it's cool to see like even him, he's one that still battles with that stuff, and you still have to keep working.
Yes, that is good.
Yeah.
It's a good message to keep putting out there,
For
that
sure.
the work never ends.
100%. Which I think a lot of people do feel like, okay, I've reached the pinnacle, but I don't think there is a pinnacle. I think you're always got to keep working.
Yes. And Tim Ferriss speaks about cycles, energy cycles, like how there's rest periods but you go back and it, you know, there's no, I apply that to life in the sense of there's never going to be some beach where you just go there. I mean, I don't think you and I could sit on a beach for too many days in a row. We'd want to go do something.
Mm-hmm.
Some people maybe not.
Yeah, I 100% like, there's no way for 7 days I could do it and be happy, or maybe even like a month I'd probably be cool, but then I'm like, okay, now what? Like, I don't know, I think there's like a level of accomplishment that you feel from doing things.
Yes.
And from like even this podcast, dude, like, this is awesome, like that you're doing this and you're consistently doing it and you're like making that effort to do something for yourself. Like, this is not for anybody else, right? This is, I mean, if people listen to it, I'm sure you're happy, right? But it's more so for doing it for yourself. Like, that's such a cool thing. And I'm sure you feel a level of like accomplishment of doing this and being consistent with it. I'm not going to speak for you, but like, that's a good example. Like, there's no one making you do this.
No.
But it's just because you like doing it and it makes you happy. And it's like something that you can have out there that said, hey, I did this, right? And I think that is what makes life really cool, when you can have those things to look back on and say, hey, I did this, or I'm going to do this. I don't know. So to your point, sailing off on the sunset, it sounds cool, but I think what's cooler is like doing things and accomplishing things.
Yes. And that is a really long-term, the satisfaction is a long-term satisfaction. Mm-hmm. I forgot where I heard this, but I heard that this framework, that there are 6 types of people in this world. 2 of those 6 are feelers, in the sense of the way they feel is of the utmost importance to them. and they mentioned that those two people are nearly completely opposite. One of them goes through the one of them values short-term satisfaction and the other one long-term satisfaction. So like people who diet really, well, you know, disciplined, yes, they are doing that because they want to feel good. But people who eat really what's the term? Hyper palative, really food that's hyper palatable food.
Tastes good.
Yeah. Burgers, French fries, donuts.
Short term.
They're also doing that to feel good, but short term. And that's a huge, it's very difficult, the long term. And you mentioned that's why you have to take advantage of the short term wins. Maybe, eating chicken, rice, broccoli for a week tastes shitty.
Yeah.
But then you're going to be like 4 or 5 pounds lighter at the end of that week.
Better.
You're going to be a little leaner. You're going to feel better. And like, I don't know, you have to create a short-term win out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I've never heard of that, but it makes sense. And yeah, the short-term satisfactions are great in the moment, but then if you think about long-term, I guess, like, what's the most important thing? I don't know if the answer is longevity, because maybe for some people it's not, but for me that is. It's like I want to do this as long as I can, at least in a healthy way, and I don't want to get sick and have something happen where that's something I can control. So if I can control that, I want to do what I can to avoid having things happen later. And if I can do small things like exercise or eat healthy or make a better decision, drink a little bit less, right? Or a lot less, for example.
Walk more.
Those things all compound, and then eventually you're going to see progress and you're going to be better off in the long term. My dad said he had a client come over, and the client brought his dad, and dad, I think it was like, he was like 73. So my dad's like, oh man, I'm going to have to like help exercise this guy who's like 73. He's probably frail. Dude was like jacked.
Nice.
And like 73, he had like awesome form with like his weights and everything. And I was like, that's so cool that you can get to that point, because some people at 73 look like they're dying. And others are just like in such good health, and it's really based on the decisions that we make now that lead up to a guy at 73 being able to do stuff like that. So I just think I want to be that person and not the dying 73-year-old. And again, I know there's things out of our control, like we've talked about already, but the things that are in my control, like I want to do what I can to control those things.
Yes. And it's about longevity. It's about having quality life. At a lot of people, when they're in their 50s, they're like, they look frail. They look much more frail than someone who's younger. And it's like, you looked at people like your dad, Cameron Haynes. It's like, dude, those guys are rock stars. And that's what I'm trying to do. It's not even just because of like, being macho or whatever. It's because they're living a better life at their age than the other people's lives at their age.
Exactly.
It's much higher quality.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might misconstrue that as, being macho. But, it's all about longevity and all about taking care of yourself. And, at that point, living a...
graceful.
Yes. graceful life in comparison to others who might be struggling because of things that they may have possibly been able to avoid when we're at the age we're at now, right? I think right now we're still at this point where we can
Get away with it.
get away with a lot of things.
But that's starting to turn.
Yes, slowly but surely. And we're starting to feel like, okay, we're getting older. Our bodies can't take this as much. I mean, alcohol is a great example.
Yes.
Comparison to 21, your body could process it a lot better than you can now. Whereas now if you have a night out, it's tough if you drink a lot. I think it's a perfect example. Even food, like now, like if I eat food and it's like not good, my stomach is just done. So I feel like I can't process it as much as I was able to when I was 20 and, playing football and
Could eat anything. Thousands of calories.
Exactly. But now it's like you got to be a lot more aware. So I think, like you said, you're starting to turn. But I want to get ahead of that turn and try to keep it in my control as much as I can.
Yes, and that means sacrificing things that are out of control.
Yeah. Which, for in the short term, like you said, like might be shitty because I might not be able to eat that burger or whatever it may be. But I think also, if you do eat healthy, or when I do eat healthy consistently, I feel like my body craves healthy food. It craves a piece of salmon or a piece of fish or whatever, steak or with rice or whatever, something super healthy. I crave like a really nice healthy meal, as opposed to when I'm like eating, for example, when I was on that cruise, there wasn't a lot of like healthy food. I did as good as I can, but like you have a burger, for example, and your body just like craves that salt and all that, and it's just, I can see how people get addicted to that stuff, but I think your body feeds off of what you put into it, and if you put in healthy stuff, you're gonna start to like crave the healthy food,
Yes, and I think microbiomes. I don't know much about microbiomes, but whenever I'm eating things like you said, it's more or less exactly what you said. I can, if it's all healthy food, natural whole foods, my body processes those really well. And then you put in a really processed food and your body's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But I used to be pretty overweight in high school, and I would eat Del Taco, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box, and like my microbiome was different then. Probably could take that way easier. And like, I think something like, I mean, that stuff's garbage. So whatever, I'm not sure what the transition would be out of that, but our bodies are used to certain foods, and I'm not sure. I don't even know, even if you do have like a certain microbiome for fast food, or if your body's on that, like, yes, it might crave that, but that could also be like a mental thing.
True.
Like, what's that word?
I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to
When
get.
we take a pill, but it doesn't do anything, but we think it does. Placebo.
Placebo, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be a placebo. Or just like, oh my gosh, I want this food. I think though, and I don't know for sure, but like to your point about the microbiome, like I think there's some science there of like just the types of stuff that, like sugar, for example, or salt, like your body does crave that because you get, I think it's also dopamine as well.
Yes.
Like the dopamine hits you get from eating food. It's just like, and it's like, oh, this is great. Like such a good, but then you get that crash afterwards. So then you want to go back and eat that food again because you felt this high of dopamine or whatever it may be. So maybe it's partly that. I don't know.
I've heard the term mouth pleasure, and I really like that term.
Yeah.
Because it's just like you're getting pleasure very short term, and it's from your mouth.
Yes, mouth pleasure. I like that.
Dopamine, I believe it.
Yeah. There's a lot of, especially with social media, there's so many like instant dopamine hits that people get today that
Many.
I think are not good.
Pornography.
Yes, pornography is another one. Like there's just it's so easy to just go and find whatever you want.
So easy.
And if you're just bored, going and scrolling on X, Y, and Z because you have nothing to do. I feel like people I remember when we were young, like before tech, like the phones or whatever, like you were just bored and there's nothing you could do but just be bored.
Yes.
I feel like nobody's able to be bored today because you can go find something else, whether it is porn or whether it is Twitter or video games or TikTok or
food.
There's so many different outlets. I think that's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. And that's kind of where meditation and even not playing music when I work out. So I'll try and do like 30 to 40 minutes of working out. And that, like, if you don't play music, it gets boring.
Yeah.
It's like, this is, I want to start thinking about something random. So it's forced boredom. And that's like what meditation is. And it's like the stimulus, like we're all overstimulated,
Too much content to take in now.
A lot of content to take in for our jobs. I mean, both of us work remotely, so we're both at the computer for our job. And then it's just a lot.
Yeah.
And with the phones, it's even more so. TikTok, Netflix, everything. And we got the two best things we've spoken about. I mean, exercise is one, definitely. Exercise, awareness, education.
Yep. I think meditation's also top of. I don't do it enough, and I need to. But when I do, I always I feel super good, and my mind's clear. Have you ever heard of NSDR?
No, what is that?
It's non-sleep deep rest, and it's like 10 minutes, but it's very similar to meditation. It's just slightly different. I've done it a handful of times, and it's best done if you do it like right when you wake up.
Did Andrew Huberman speak about it?
Yeah.
Okay, could you explain it?
I'm gonna butcher it, but basically it's just 10 minutes of like feeling all of your like body, basically. So like kind of talks you through, okay, like feel and squeeze your feet or your toes or your fingers, and like kind of walks you through all of your body, and like, okay, feel your knees right now, and just like kind of you're obviously your eyes are closed, but it's kind of like makes you more aware of your body and breathing at the same time, like that you're actually here breathing. Feel your body. It just makes you more aware. Going back to what you talked about, it's a really good one. I recommend you just Google on YouTube NSDR. There's a bunch of them.
Okay.
It's a good one though.
NSDR.
Yeah.
Body awareness.
Yes. Highly recommend. What about, we didn't talk about your year-end review. How was your 2022?
My 2021 was extremely strong.
Yeah.
It was a great year. I've had two really great years in my life. One was 2018, one was 2021. And 2022 I faltered a bit. It wasn't as strong for me. I was in a long distance relationship. I don't know if that was the best thing for me. We ended the relationship, and I made some mistakes this year. Fell into some old habits. I took more authority in August. I had to, I was forced to speak. Not forced. I wanted to. I needed to. But I was prompted to have the difficult conversations in August, ones that should have been had maybe in February. And I started doing a lot of logging. I have a boundary tracker.
Logging like what specifically?
Like my habits, time, did I exercise? How did I, hit 30 minutes of exercise? Did I meditate? Did I watch pornography? Did I reach my 3 goals? There's things, and that's all being logged, and now I have to live up to them. Whereas, and I did this before in 2018, where I was logging everything, and I didn't do it in 2021. Kind of lost a lot of awareness. But Tim Ferriss says, "What gets measured gets managed," and so that's huge. Like just having to at the, maybe the next, I do it every next morning. I do my log. Like, did I miss this boundary? And sometimes it's like straight X's, straight red.
But you're holding yourself accountable.
Yes.
And you're logging those things and saying, okay, did you hold to this today? And if not, gives you that reflection that we talked about and say, like, why not? And then, like, helps you fix or work on it moving forward, right? In Goggins' book, he talks about, like, if he's having a moment of weakness, he'll, like, put a recorder to his mouth and start talking, and then he'll replay it and, like, listen to himself and, like, hear, okay, these are all these excuses that I'm telling myself, basically, which I thought was really interesting. There's also, I'm not actively doing it, but there's a book called Bullet Journaling, if you heard of that.
Yes. Could you explain it?
Again, I'll butcher it, but I have it. I can send it to you. I think you might, being that you already track all of your stuff, it's very similar. Like, you're basically tracking all your habits and you track all your goals throughout like a month or 2 months. And there's like a just really effective, quick way to do it once you master it, so to speak. But it's just like a journal, but you're logging everything from the day and reflecting on the day and talking about a plan for tomorrow. I feel like you'd really enjoy it based on what you just said of logging everything. I don't know how you do it today. It sounds similar. Like you mentioned the check marks of X's and what you did and didn't do.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's interesting. But
I'll have to check it out.
I think you were still talking about 2022, so I'll let you get back at it. And I traveled a lot this year. My relationship, she lived in Mexico, so I traveled to Mexico a bunch. Traveled to Chile, was there for 5 weeks. I think I traveled to Mexico 6 times this year. It was fun. Learned Spanish as well. Got pretty serious about some other things involving my career. Learned 3D modeling, wrote a proposal and turned it in, got rejected. But the overarching highlighting theme, I feel like it wasn't as strong of a year for me because falling back into old habits. And this year, taking more authority, being more serious. Maybe not more serious, but taking more authority of my actions, taking more authority of, having those hard conversations. I mean, really, those so important. Yeah.
It's so
easy to put off too.
It's, again, like, kind of natural. You don't want to do it because it's just an awkward thing. But then so much can be, transparency is huge. And the lack of transparency, I think, is devastating.
Yeah.
So it's similar. It's having those hard conversations early is important.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing where Another thing is knowing where my values stand in accordance with the people that are closest to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was someone in my life who I feel didn't have as close of values,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have even near as close of values. And you kind of have to walk away
Mm-hmm.
because if it's someone that you see occasionally, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
If it's one of the 5 closest people to you in your life, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of your values, the values of the people closest to you, and make those align in some sort of way that works for yourself, for myself.
Yeah. I think I agree with that completely. I think like just it's good to take a pulse check and like,
Yes.
okay, where's everybody at? Like who's in my life, who's close to me that I feel like you said, you talk to on a regular basis or you keep in touch with, and do they fit with that? Which it sounds like a selfish thing, and it kind of is, but not in a bad way. It's
No.
like you just have to do what's best for you. And like you said, as long as you have those conversations and you're kind of speaking your mind and give the other person the opportunity to speak theirs and speak your truth, then like that's really all you can do. Like obviously don't be an asshole about it when you're having those conversations, which I don't feel like you would be. But that's super important because then you know where you stand and they stand and you can move on. You're not having this weird sense of unclear, or I guess you get clarity, I'll put it that way, either way of where these people stand, right? So that's good that you're doing that. And also like it's okay to not have a great year. Like it's okay. Like it's not a bad thing. And I know it doesn't sound like you're being super hard on yourself. I think you're reflecting, which is good, but like not every year is going to be the best years of our life, right? But I think as long as you can take what you did in that year and just try to improve upon it next year and take authority, like you said, and hold yourself more accountable to the things and your values that you really want to accomplish, it's really all you can ask for, because every year at the end of the day is a learning experience for the next
Till
how
death.
many ever exactly we have. So
Yes, forgiveness, but not excuses.
Mm-hmm.
No blaming too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I put myself in the position of a long distance relationship, and that situation may not have worked out for me.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no blaming there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. Even if someone else has values different than my own and you need to separate, there's no blaming, saying you did this or I did this. It's just like, no, we have different value systems.
Mm-hmm.
Not even, maybe close, but in a couple of things, they're very different. And those are important things. So it's just best for both of us to just walk away, create more space in our lives for something that does align with our values. It is easier for us, does align more with kind of how we want to live our lives. And David Goggins speaks, that's what he does, no bullshit. Just put it out there.
Yep.
And he does it in a very, in your face way. I can't do it that way. But still, it doesn't matter. He's not going to putter around the situation. He's going to do what he feels he needs to do.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, you only have one life.
Yes.
And you don't want to look back. And I think, like you said, forgiveness is important, but also, not holding grudges and not like I'm sure all the conversations that I've had that have been difficult, like I don't hate the person or I don't like them any less. I still have a lot of love for these people because at one point they held important part of my, or they were important in my life at one point. So I still really appreciate these people, but like you said, it's just right now it's different and they can go separate ways, and that's okay. And I still care about them, but there's not space right now for them and for either of you. So I don't know. I'm right there with you there.
So Michael, this has been episode 100. Wow.
I'm excited to be number 100. That's what number was the first one that we had? Do you remember?
3.
So 3 to 100. That's insane that you've done 97 of these since.
97.
And dude, you've gotten like so much more comfortable and confident. It's really cool to see like that evolution of. It's been what, 2 years now, or how many years?
I think our first one was in summer of 2019.
Wow.
So it's been 3 years.
That's right. Holy cow.
Because I did like 8 or 9 episodes, and then I dropped for like a year and then came back at it much stronger.
That's awesome.
It is. And I thank you for supporting me for all those 97 episodes. I think, this is episode 5 or 6. And always you've been a good friend, and I appreciate this conversation even.
Absolutely. I agree. And I appreciate you as well. And I'm happy I was able to support you. It's pretty cool to see. And I always talk about like, oh yeah, I've done my friend's podcast like 5-6 times. It's cool to be a part of that. So I'm happy I was able to be a part of that as well.
My guest today has been Michael Carroll. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Michael.
Thanks, Karush.